Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode and a new week of the Daily Prompt. In this series, I am more or less vlogging my adventure trying to build an independent film studio from the ground up with absolutely nothing and building as we go along. Why am I doing this? Because since I was 8 years old, I've been dreaming of making movies. I've been in the film industry since I was 12 years old, which for those counting at home is a very long time. And over the past about 20 years, I've been trying to help writers develop material that producers could actually say yes to. Because when I couldn't find anything viable, my dream of building an independent film studio was pretty much shot. So I had to try to figure out how to help writers get where they want to be to try to ultimately get where I want to be. So that's what this series is about. This series is about I'm showing you my adventure, and the reason I'm showing you my adventure is so that you can see how to do it yourself. The fact that anybody can do this anywhere in the world. By the way, we have the tools available to us today to do this. What's going to become the thing that is the differentiator between different people, different filmmakers, different writers, is literally the quality level. Your ability to tell a story, your ability to tell a story that engages an audience. So today what I want to talk about is I want to start focusing on this project that I'm building, this project that we're creating now. This is what's going to be the first project on this film studio venture. If you're new here and you haven't sort of watched all the videos leading up to this one, there is a whole lot of context here. To try to summarize it for you, ultimately I'm building a writer's room at the end of a screenplay development system that I built. And in that writer's room, writers are going to write material that I will then go produce. The first project, to try to give the writers some cover, to not have our first project out of the gate be something that falls and rests squarely on their shoulders, I've decided to put it so it lands squarely on my shoulders. So if I make something that completely bombs, I can take the blame for it. If it doesn't achieve our objective, we can look at the mistakes that I made. We can pinpoint why I've made those mistakes, where I miscalculated, and how to reorient and retarget so that the next projects then do hit their mark more effectively. Now, I believe that the project right out of the gate is a good one. I believe that the project right out of the gate is going to be something that people are excited about. Why do I believe that? Because I like the idea. I'm passionate about the idea. And most importantly, I believe there's an audience for that idea. Now, if you haven't been watching all the way along, the initial idea here is to start by making no and low budget independent films, so that if you make a film for no money, and you sell it for you sell just a handful of sales, you can recoup the money that you made. And then with that profit, you can reinvest in bigger and bigger projects. Now, what I've decided to do is create basically a no-budget project to prove concept, to prove that anyone anywhere can do this, and to show you that strategy, and we'll see how that strategy plays out. So I want to start today by we're going to start this week by looking at the project and at the strategy itself and how I'm designing for it to unfold. Whether it does or not, we can look back on these episodes and go, okay, he was off by this, he was off by that, or bang, he hit the nail right on the head. So the very first thing that I want to talk about today is audience. If you're going to make a movie, as we know through this series, I really believe that stories are a two-way street. I really believe that it's not just about what you're saying or putting out there. It's really about what the audience is perceiving and interpreting, and how they're taking that on board. Does it resonate with them? Is it something that they get excited about? Is it something that they think about, that they want to share with other people to build and grow that audience organically? Or is it something that you're going to have to keep trying to market the basic idea? So my belief ultimately is that there are two audiences that are most receptive to independent and no-budget filmmaking. One audience is horror audiences. Horror films you can make for very little money, And there's always an audience for horror films. Now, a smaller audience, but also an audience that is open to lower budget projects, generally speaking, is the science fiction audience. You know, I have no interest in making horror films. If you've seen the earlier episodes, it's kind of a running joke even. I can be friends with people who do, so don't think that I'm dismissing what you create if you create horror films. But it's just not the kind of thing that I'm interested in making. My worldview is all about sort of I believe the future is an optimistic place. I believe that human beings use technology to solve our problems. So all of the great catastrophes and whatever that are looming and that are racing toward us, I believe we will solve these problems. And I believe science fiction can show us how, or can open our minds to how that can happen. So of those two, I'm going to focus on science fiction initially. So what I'm going to start building, hopefully I'll start getting people responding to this and wanting to be part of the team to help me build it. If not, I'll do it myself. And build. What I want to do is start building an audience who's interested in watching the sci-fi projects that we put together. Now, how are they going to be interested in watching the sci-fi projects that we put together until we put something together? So ultimately, we may, as an exercise, start creating some short film projects to work off the cobwebs. I haven't been in production for many, many years. I've been trying to focus on helping writers write stuff for a decade or more, 2 decades almost. And so getting back into the production flow is maybe we'll make some short film projects. Maybe we'll make some teaser trailers for the film that we're going to be making. Maybe we'll make some concept art. If there's any artists that want to sort of jump on this train, and if you want to create movie posters in the future, reach out to me. We can get you started on some of these things, and we can build up. Ultimately, we're going to have lots and lots of movie posters. So these are the invisible opportunities in the tiny little windows that I talked about in earlier episodes. Now, the goal for this is going to be to find and to build that science fiction audience that'll be interested in the ideas and the sort of the type of science fiction that I'm looking to make. Obviously, when you're on a zero budget, when you're in a very low budget, making big space operas is more of a challenge. You can make them, and there is actually an audience, a science fiction audience, that doesn't mind watching low budget sort of schlocky version of that, right? Where you know they're not in a spaceship, but you admire the effort that they went to, and so you sort of invest in the story for that reason. I don't really want to make that. I want to make sort of mind-bendy sci-fi. I want to make science fiction that is based on ideas and concepts and situations that are intrinsically fascinating. And the reason I want to do this is because if you can create a story that is intrinsically fascinating, if you can create a story that engages the intellect in addition to being a good, well-told story, what you're going to end up doing is connecting with an audience who's right into that. So if you can connect with an audience on an intellectual, engaging, mind-bendy sort of mental framework, you can end up building rabid fans. You can, if you do it right, if you serve them well, if you create something that really connects with them and engages with that part of their brain, they'll want to see what you have next. And if we consistently create material that excites them and that gets them, that engages their mind and makes them think about cool new things, then that audience can grow and build. By the way, I haven't been coughing like this for days. I don't know why it's come back. Anyway, So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be focusing on that kind of story. If you want a sort of mental model, it would be something like Black Mirror or The Twilight Zone. Those tend toward sort of negative endings. They tend toward the down ending or the ironic ending, or something that ultimately is dystopian or pessimistic about the future, or looks at the negative aspect of technology. My general aim is going to be kind of the opposite of that. My general aim is, my general premise is that human beings are at our core good. We have the right intentions. We screw things up along the way, but when we screw things up, we recognize that we screw things up, and then we go in and we try to fix it when left to our best angels. Now, that's not always the case, and I know, don't tell me that the world, you don't have to show me that the world is not always representative of that idea, but I do believe that's our core. I do believe that I've met enough people, tens of thousands of people over the years, and I really genuinely believe that most of them are good. And so because of that, I want to make movies that use those principles, those mind-bending principles, those intellectual ideas, maybe even actual visual expressions of what a science principle would be, to make it more engaging, make it more accessible, make it more entertaining for an audience. And then make movies that show us at our best, or that send us in that positive direction. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be conflict. That doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot of drama. That's not going to be scary, negative, horrible, evil stuff in these movies, right? It's not going to be all Pollyanna. Hey, the world's fantastic. This is not propaganda. This is ultimately a general frame. Now, does this mean that if you join Fast Screenplay that you have to write that? No. Does this mean if you watch the Daily Prompt, you have to write that? Does it mean connecting with me, you have to write that? No. What I'm saying here is that I believe strategically, to build from nothing, you have to engage with an audience that will be interested in story-based ideas and forgive budget limitations. If you're really going to start at a no-budget, low-budget level, you need to make something that resonates with an audience in that way. I believe if you try to make a $10 million film for $10, it's going to look like you made a $10 million film for $10. It's going to look cheap. It's going to look like the schlocky low-budget version of the thing that you set out to do. I believe a much better strategy is to create stories for the budget level that you're at. So, our initial films are probably not going to be set in space. They're probably not going to be super visual effects laden. Maybe it'll depend on what we can achieve. It will depend on what we can achieve well on the budget limitations, and then creating and writing to that, so that we're creating a story-driven project. I've talked about this in earlier videos, but the difference between what I'm setting out to do here and what a lot of the low-budget indie world does is, I believe most people who do this sort of super low-budget thing start from a place of production. So it's really about, we just want to make something. So they go out and they string together loose bits of a story. It's not really a great story, but they want to make something so badly that they go out and make something. What I'm trying to do and what I'm presenting here is, I want to create solid story. I want to create something that is at its core a great story. That it at its core is a great story that we happen to be making for very little to no money. Because I believe that way you're going to engage an audience much more actively, because you're not sort of schlocking your way through a poor quality story, and you're not really just throwing something together because you want to make a film. You're putting your audience first. If there's one overriding thesis to take away from my philosophical approach to writing and storytelling, it's that if indeed stories are the expression of meaning from one person, the storyteller, to another person, the story hearer or viewer, if that's in fact the case, then it stands to reason that you should put the audience first. You should really think about who the audience is. You should really think about what's going to satisfy them. That doesn't mean you change what you want to create for them. What it means is you want to create something that is unique to you, that you're passionate about, that is in sync with what you want to do, but to do it in a way that connects with that audience. If all you're thinking about is you, then, and you're not thinking about the audience or how it's going to land with them or what they're going to take away from it, then it's only about putting ideas out there. And if it's only about putting ideas out there, you can very easily miss your target because you're so in your own ideas. This doesn't mean you have to write this way. It doesn't mean storytelling has to exist that way. It doesn't even mean you have to do my system that way. At the end of the day, that's my general belief. I believe you're going to create stories that actually resonate with audiences more effectively if you do that. So what we're going to be doing with this first project is we have a story. It's being worked on right now. We have basically the broad strokes of what's going to happen. We know how we're going to start. We know how it's going to build. We know probably what's going to happen to surprise us along the way. But over the next 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully, we're going to nail down that story. Over the next sort of 3 weeks after that, we're going to lock down the story, probably even create a first draft of a script. Over the next month or so after that, we're going to refine the script and have something ready to shoot. We're going to aim to shoot in June. That's the goal here. That's the target. Now, in that time, we need to start building the potential audience. We need to start looking at where we're going to start marketing this thing. If we do create a teaser trailer, where are we going to put that teaser trailer? If we do ultimately connect with people along the way, how are we going to get them as part of our ecosystem so that when the movie comes out, we can actually let them know about it? It's not just enough. Unfortunately, creative people often just, all you want to do is spend the time in the creative place. Now, it's great if you can team up with a producer, somebody like me who's more interested in thinking about the whole picture. But one way or another, we really do need to make sure that what you create has the ability to land where it's going to land. So we're going to try to build this audience over the next couple of months as well. Doing that alongside this vlog, alongside actually developing it, alongside working with writers in the writers' room for the next projects, along with working with new writers going through the system. There's a lot on my plate, absolutely. But my hope is that once a week or maybe twice a week, I'm going to start checking in with the progress of this and sort of the thinking behind it. So my hope is that with this episode, you get an initial sense of the kind of thing that we're trying to build. To actually make a low to no budget indie feature, we need to obviously restrict the production requirements. Big expensive props, unique custom things that we don't already have access to. All of these kinds of things need to be limited. So from a story development standpoint, we want to make sure that we're creating story that is organic to what we do and don't have, that's organic to the nature of the production itself. This is what I've talked about in earlier episodes about how if you haven't been through the production process, it's really hard to include that understanding, that perspective, that frame of reference in your creative process. But if you have, then all of that thinking goes into your story development. You're more likely to create something that actually can feasibly be done in the first place, and that also connects with its end target and is also something that you want to say, that you're passionate about. I can't stress enough the idea that I have that I'm working on with a writer, that a couple of other writers are contributing to. I can't stress enough how excited I am about the idea itself. It's just a cool idea, I think. And I think you'll think too, if you have any interest in this kind of sci-fi world. And if not, follow along for the journey just to see what I'm talking about, because all of this can be adapted and modified for wherever you're at. I talked in a previous episode about the different kinds of audiences that are out there, the enormous, virtually unlimited opportunity there is for people all around the world to do this stuff. If you watch how I'm going through this process and how this evolves, you'll be able to see how to adapt it to your own project, the kinds of things that you want to make as well. So, don't know why I'm coughing as much today. Literally the most I've coughed in a week. But anyway, so let's turn this into a daily prompt for you today. What I want you to think about today is the project that you're working on now, or the kinds of projects that you want to make, if you were to make them at a low or no budget scale. How could you create those projects in such a way that they are made for the budget level that you're creating, but also tap into the audience that you're trying to reach? If you don't yet know who the audience would be, if you don't yet know how to connect with that audience, if you don't yet know, if you're not yet thinking about that side of the table, right? If you haven't sort of spun it around and seen your own project from an audience perspective, do that today. That should be the prompt today. If you have already sort of looked at it from an audience perspective, imagine how you're going to reach that audience from a low to no budget standpoint, if that's what you want to do. Now, remember, you can always disregard the specific path I'm taking and just use these as inspirational prompts for your own daily writing. I'm not saying you have to do what I'm doing. I'm not even saying you have to emulate what I'm doing. I'm specifically going to be a little bit vague about certain parts of this process so that you don't emulate what I'm doing. I want you to find your path. I want you to find your way. I want you to tap into the audience that you want to tap into and in the way that you want to tap into them. All I want you to do is start thinking strategically about how to make that happen. That's today's Daily Prompt. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.